5:30. It is ready to commence this evening's business. This is the Historic Landmark Commission meeting. It is the 6th of October, 2022. First order of business. Let's have an approval. I'm going to ask for a motion, please, for an approval of the minutes from last month's meeting. The month prior.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Very good. Thank you, Kenton. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Very well. Let's vote in order, please. That's Babs. John Uwanowski is out of town. Robert Hyde is not with us this evening. Kenton.
Aye.
Carlton.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
And Amanda.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That's passed unanimously, so the minutes are approved as noted. I do not have a report from the chair. Babs, did you have a report? No. Very well, thank you. Report from the director?
Thank you. So just real quick, I wanted to update the commission on a couple of things that are pending with the city council. They have some long-standing zoning changes that they had a briefing on a couple weeks ago, and they have tentatively scheduled for decision on the 18th. So we'll see if they make it on that actual agenda. But these are the big change that's included in this is a whole new off-street parking regulation. So many of you were not on the Landmarks Commission, but typically when we have these big, huge proposals that affect the entire city, we'll give a briefing to the HLC on those. That happened several years ago because this has been sitting around for a while. But it basically in the downtown area removes parking minimums and along transit. We already had no minimum, but it cleans up that chapter quite a bit and expands where that goes and where people can apply or propose no minimum parking. In places where haven't had that, or where we've had that rule in place, most projects are still providing parking, but it provides flexibility for those developers, particularly for housing, because parking is such a substantial cost to constructing housing. So we will probably be doing some FYIs on things. I know the Landmarks Commission doesn't necessarily get into the parking details, really just location when you're looking at various proposals for new construction and things like that. But we'll give an appropriate level update to that. The other significant change proposal is the changes to the RMF 30 zone. So that's a multifamily zoning district. The 30 is the maximum building height. A lot of that is in historic districts. So a lot of the townhome types of new construction that you're seeing on sites that were non-contributing structures or vacant are typically in one of the RMF zones. And so that proposal lowers the minimum lot size per dwelling unit, and it adds some design standards that apply to the district as a whole, not just things that were in the historic district. The whole intent is to try to keep the scale manageable, but also have that function as a multifamily district instead of a single family district, which the rules as they're written now currently do. So
The lot size, also the width, like
the lot width is being removed in that proposal. So which really is actually a best practice in infill development. We are instilling a maximum lot width to keep people from combining large parcels and creating something that is entirely out of scale for what may be in that zone. So,
Nick, on the parking, does that be applied by a particular zone, or is it an area in which it will be applied?
So basically what it does is that we've categorized each zoning district into what we're calling parking contexts. So those that are served well by transit, doesn't have to necessarily be rail, but high frequency, so at least 15-minute service or less. Those are the zoning districts that don't require minimum parking. So That's along our transit corridors. Downtown is the biggest area where that is a significant change. And then, so there's 4 contexts, and then each context has different regulations, different parking requirements for each one based on the other ways to get around and the proximity to other uses.
Is that like how does that work? You have 2 types of zoning?
No. So basically what someone would do if they're proposing a new project, let's say it's in a D1 zone downtown, they look for all the D1 regulations, all that stuff, building height, setbacks, yada, yada. Then they look at their parking, and what they're going to find is like, oh, I'm in the D1 zone, so I'm in the category that doesn't require minimum parking. I can then fulfill whatever needs I need in my site or work to have a shared parking with existing parking garages or something like that. And then the third item is a project that started has expanding where in the city single room occupancy dwelling unit types of housing can go. It's called shared housing. We changed the name of that, but it's intended to expand where in the city we can build or people can build housing that for people primarily who are transitioning out of homelessness or preventing them, giving them options so that they don't become homeless. There is a growing trend, not just in the United States, but worldwide, of shared housing being more market rate because there's a lot of people who that fits their lifestyle. So those are the big 3 changes or proposals that are, like I said, they've been with the council for, I think, some of them since 2019. So it'll be good to get decisions either way on those things, and then we can know how to move forward and on to the next. All 3 of those have had some pushback. Parking, surprisingly, has had the least of those 3. But one of the things that the council has indicated is that the Thriving in Place study that has been going on about the displacement of people in housing is opening, I think, people's eyes towards if we keep doing things the way we've done them for the last 25 years, our housing situation is going to be worse regardless of what the market is. And so I think that's kind of the impetus. So that's all I had.
Very well. Kenton, did you have a question earlier? You did? Okay, very good. All right, very well. Let's see here. We just had the report from the director, and I think now it's time for general public comments. I believe there's one general comment that I have. Cindy?
So my name is Cindy Cromer, and nothing that I say to you tonight should be interpreted as criticism of you, at least in the next 2 minutes. But I looked at your authorization in 21A. I'm in 21A.06.050, and you have the authority to make recommendations when requested by the Planning Commission, the hearing officer, or the City Council as appropriate on applications for zoning amendments. This is related to your last item, which is not open to public comment. It's a discussion item. So it may have gotten past me, but I don't see where the Planning Commission, a hearing officer, or the City Council asked you to make a recommendation on the proposed zoning change on 500 East. But this is an issue near and dear to my heart, the loss of housing from our beleaguered Central City neighborhood. The data on Thriving in Place regarding gentrification and displacement in Central City is extremely sobering. There is abundant commercial space, both conforming and non-conforming in this neighborhood. There is historic and recently constructed commercial space. And it is utterly inadequate that the city continues to fail to fix the housing loss mitigation ordinance. You cannot take housing out of the city's supply when we are in the kind of duress regarding housing that we are. And we also don't have adequate ordinances regarding adaptive reuse. None of this is your fault. But since I can't talk later, I thought I'd make a general comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Not online. Very well. We will now move into the items that we have before us this evening. And before we do that, well, let me just say that I believe there are four items before us this evening, and then one of them is the last is a work session. And I wanted to read something just before we do that. It says, anyone who is an adversely affected party, as defined by Utah Code Section 10-9A-103, may appeal a decision of the Historic Landmark Commission by filing a written appeal with the appeals hearing officer within 10 calendar days following the date of which a record of decision is issued. The applicant may object to the decision of the Historic Landmark Commission by filing a written appeal with the appeals hearing officer within 30 calendar days following the date on which a record of decision is issued. So with that, let's be respectful, let's be efficient, and let's get about the city's business. So let's start with the first issue this evening. I believe that's 136, yes, 136 South, 700 East.
Thank you, Chair. This is a request for new construction of a two-family dwelling along with a request for modification of the front yard setback from 20 feet to 17 feet 5 inches. The proposed residence is located on the west side of 700 East, approximately mid-block between 100 South and 200 South. It's located at 136 South, 700 East. To the north is a two-story contributing a small multifamily building, and to the south is a single-story contributing mid-century commercial office building. Across 700 East and out of the historic district are a three-story multifamily building and a set of 3 single-family attached dwellings. The streetscape view at the top of the slide places the proposed dwelling in context with other dwellings on the block face. There are a mix of building types on this street, and most are residential and historic structures. The proposed dwellings have a total footprint of 3,387 square feet and are 2 stories. The front unit, Unit A, faces 700 East, and the rear unit, Unit B, is located behind it. Staff is recommending a condition that additional fencing on the site is wood or metal and that the AC condensing units are at least 4 feet from the property line. The proposed dwelling is 2 stories with a height of approximately 26 feet, and then this slide shows the front elevation. The roof is asphalt shingle, while the entry porch roofs are standing seam metal. The building materials are a fiber cement siding, stucco, and stone veneer, and the windows are aluminum clad wood. The doors will be composite with French doors on the second floor, and then both have transoms above them. With the condition of approval for individually cut stone, the materials meet the 80% requirement. Staff's also recommending conditions that the fiber cement siding have a smooth finish and that any mullions on fixed windows are simulated or true divided lights rather than grids between the glass. And the door for Unit A is located approximately 100 feet to the rear of the door for the entry to Unit A. Sorry, the door for Unit B. And then as far as the design for the project, the applicant worked with staff to make several modifications, including the addition of the entry porch on the front, the covered second floor balcony, and then the asphalt shingle roof. So this shows the north and south elevations The materials on these elevations are the same as the front facade, the fiber cement siding, the stucco, and the stone veneer. And the second floor patio separates the two units. And then on the south elevation, there are cantilevered areas that extend generally over the garage. This shows the rear elevation, and similar to the others, the materials are the fiber cement siding, stucco, and the stone veneer. And so the staff recommends approval of the new construction request for the two-family dwelling and supports the modification in the reduction of the front yard setback, along with the conditions of approval that were identified in the staff report. And overall, staff finds that the proposal meets the historic design guidelines and complies with the residential design guidelines. And this is the staff recommendation for approval with the conditions identified in the staff report. And the applicant is here and also has a presentation. Are there questions for staff at this point?
Very good. Any questions for Sarah?
Commissioners, just a reminder to please speak directly into your microphone so that I can hear you and the audience can hear you.
Very well.
Thank you very much. Let's see here. Oh, can I?
Try to get that going. And then you can just do down.
My name's Matt. I'm with JZW Architects.
Just a little bit closer for everyone to hear.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's
All right.
better. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm Matt with JZW Architects. I appreciate your time. We are very excited to present this project. Sarah covered a lot of the aspects of this. We wanted to create a home that would feel like it belonged in the neighborhood. We've combined a high-end residential architectural style with a contemporary look. As was said, the primary materials are stone veneer, horizontal lap siding, stucco, and asphalt shingles with some standing seam at the entrances to provide a variety of materials in a visually appealing facade. So that would fit with the mixed-use theme of the central city. To minimize the building footprint, we've created overhanging spaces. I think you can see here, and let's see, and here to better utilize the site. The orientation of the units was laid out to best respond to the existing site conditions, the lot size, and to maintain a similar feel to the other buildings on the street. The materials consist primarily of durable materials, so that the building will maintain a well-kept look. The stucco siding is used in a limited fashion, just in strategic locations to enhance the variety of materials. And like Sarah said, we've been working with her to better bring it in line with the goals of the historic district here. Originally, we had overhang that was in the rear setback. We eliminated that. We moved the front entrance from Unit A to the front of the building. We extended the roof over Unit A. It gives it a similar look to the building that is just to the north of it. We adjusted areas of stone, siding, and stucco to more closely align with the buildings in the neighborhood, and we changed the sliding doors with French doors to give it that more historic look. Really appreciate your time and open it up to questions. Is there a view?
Commissioners, any questions for either staff or the applicant?
Yes. Were there some changes to the setbacks that were necessary for this that we need to consider?
Yes, so originally we had the building at the setback from the front. In working with Sarah, she noted that the adjacent buildings were a little closer to the street. So in conjunction with eliminating that back overhang, our suggestion was to bring the building forward a little bit to more closely align with adjacent structures. And if I remember correctly, the majority of what's going over the setback is that front entrance canopy on Unit A that faces the street.
Very well. Just a quick question. You've seen the recommendation by staff, and there's seven different caveats. You've seen all of those?
Yes.
And you're okay with everything that's written there?
Yes.
All right, very good. Commissioners, any other questions? Hearing none. Actually, I think there is now, let's see here, we have to move into public hearing. Cindy, I think you had a comment on this item as well?
Yep, you're a perennial commenter. So, I want you to look at the street context provided by this applicant.
I'm sorry, Cindy, could you speak into the...
I want you to look at the streetscape and the context of the other contributory structures provided by this applicant compared to Station 424, which you saw a few months ago. This applicant has done a far superior job of showing what his project will look like in the context of the streetscape. And I want to register that and offer my compliments. We need to know how a new building fits in. Secondly, I want to talk to you about what was here. It was a contributory structure. It was lost to a fire. It was one of 3 contributory structures that we've lost to fires within a block. I looked at it for possible purchase in 2003. I do not invest on state highways. That's a personal rule. And the building was also in bad condition and was overpriced. So I did not proceed with its acquisition, but it had absolutely fabulous architectural details, especially in the dining room where there was leaded glass and the original built-ins. Had the original staircase. It was being used as a boarding house, and there were far more than 3 unrelated people living in the house when I toured it. The conditions were deplorable, and that speaks to the city's lack of enforcement regarding housing and what that sets us up for in terms of loss of historic structures. The other property that burned within a block was a group home. So those are 2 historic structures that were contributory on the 700 East frontage that we've lost to fires, and they were both worthy structures. I'm delighted to see this gap in the neighborhood filled in. The house that was there would be documented in the early historic surveys and was there in 2003 when I toured it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any other comments on the public hearing. Are there any other public comments? Very well. Hearing that, I'm going to close the public hearing and offer to the applicant if there's any rebuttal or comment to anything that's been said to this point.
No, thank you for the
Right, very
background.
good.
And yeah.
So let's now get into executive session. This is now closed to the applicant and to the public. Commissioners, any comments concerning this first case? We can go in order if you like, or go ahead.
All right. I'd simply like to say that when I reviewed this and read through it, it's an unusual lot. I think this is very effective use and complementary to the surrounding buildings, and I'm frankly pleased to see it's being used effectively.
Great.
Michael, any comments?
I feel the same way. I guess my only reservation is regarding the mixture of materials. That seems a bit, I guess it's in keeping with some things we've seen recently that are also fitting within historic district regulations. But yeah, I'm happy to see this as well.
Amanda, any comments did you like?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the working with the planning staff to incorporate some of those historical elements that help it to tie into that, to the neighborhood itself, and the French doors, nice touch there. And I also was appreciative of the sparing of the large tree at the corner on the lot line there, that that will be hopefully taken care of. It's not too much disruption to the root system, but
Yes, yeah.
Brandon, any comments?
Yeah, I'll echo what Amanda said about staff's good work and the applicant's willingness and ability to work closely with staff to make necessary improvements. So that's to your credit.
Thank you.
I'll add a final comment, and it almost feels to me like it's a unit with an accessory dwelling unit instantly added, and I think it's an interesting response to the housing shortage that we have in Salt Lake, and I find it quite interesting that it's a use, it's a maximum use of the site, for 2 units as opposed to just 1. So very nicely done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So, hearing that, can I entertain a motion, please?
I will make a motion. Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and input received during the public hearing, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request for a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction of the 2-family dwelling at 136 South, 700 East, as presented in PLNHLC 2022-00724, with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
Very well, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Mike.
Very good, thank you, Michael. Let's turn to vote, please, and let's do this in order. Babs?
Aye.
Hinton?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Amanda?
aye.
Very good. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, very well. Let's move on to the second item. This is new construction at 158 North State Street.
Mr. Chair, can I make a quick comment? Just a reminder that with the change to the HLC's policies and procedures, the chair actually does vote on all items. I think that we need to indicate how you would have.
Very well. I was remembering that I wouldn't vote unless there was a tie. So do I officially vote now?
You do officially vote on every
Very good.
item.
Then I will officially vote in the affirmative, and the motion passes with all of us. Thank you very much. Very well. Now let's move to the second. And Aaron?
That's me. Thank you. You're reviewing this request to consider its compatibility with the district according to the standards you have in front of you. It's a request for new construction of a modern style building at 158 North State Street. Here's some context. It's in the RMF 35 zone. It's the second house on the property. 2 homes are allowed on a lot this size, but we'll get into some details about how they want to split the property in the future and what your role is in that process. And staff is recommending approval of this request with the conditions listed in the staff report. Specifically with the HVAC units, they aren't technically part of this proposal for your review, but if they are located near the park side on the south side of the property, then that condition to screen them would apply. But that's a detail that would be worked out with staff at the building permit review process. So here are the requested modifications, and it gets a little confusing because there are 2 lots proposed with this application. So we'll start with the west lot, which is the new lot and for the new house. The first is a reduction of that south side yard setback from 10 feet to 5 feet. The second is reducing the front yard setback from 20 feet to 13 feet so that the house is brought forward in context with the rest of the neighborhood, so it's in line with what's going on. And then reducing that lot width from 50 feet to 42.5 feet. And that's an approximate number. It's that as close as we're going to get here. And then the east lot, there were a couple other modifications, specifically reducing that south side yard setback from 10 feet to 0 feet. And I've tried to label it here, if you can see that, the details. And then reducing the lot width from 50 feet to 48 and some change. Let's get to know the site. This has been, from what I understand, historically a pool for this property. There is a building, you can see here, that blue-looking building towards the back. See where my hand is. That was a pool house. And it will be cleared, and it's actually like built into the retaining wall in the back. That'll be all reinforced. So there will no longer be a pool house there. It had an address on Google Maps, and that confused me, but it's nothing. It's just a pool house. We'll just walk through here so you can get a view for those of you who haven't had a chance to go to the site. This is from the southwest corner, where the steepest slope on the property is. And this retaining wall would be removed and replaced with a structural retaining wall reflecting the design of the house. And we'll see that on the street view. There's that pool house and some fencing. This is where I'm standing here is in that park. And there's that window and No. The pool was, where I'm standing here is the City Creek Park. On the other side of the fence is where the pool was. There's some details that'll be pulled off when the construction happens. Here's where the pool was, this open area here. This is that Tudor house to the north. I get confused because uphill is east in my brain for everywhere except for this part of town. Then some homes around the neighborhood across the street to give you some more context, because to the north, the homes, other than the one that's immediately adjacent on the same property, they are of this very extravagant Tudor style that doesn't, they're special. And what if we tried to follow the context here, there's a lot of other homes that we'd be ignoring the context across the street. So just some homes across the street. This is one of my favorites, and I just wanted to exhibit this because the color scheme seems to best reflect what they're proposing, especially with the stucco and the black trim. Okay, here we go. So you see this retaining wall here that they're proposing to kind of give it, hate that mouse, a structural base. There's a chimney right there in the middle. And they have worked closely with staff to modify what they had initially proposed into what is in front of you today. In the staff report, I included what it was and what it is now. It's a big step forward. They took away a garage that was proposed on the front of the house and moved that to parking in the rear. They gave it a stronger base instead of having it floating on glass, giving it that porch base feeling that you see more often in these older construction styles, and giving the windows more divisions so you have that vertical emphasis to help it meet with the standards. We've looked at this. This is the site plan and some elevations here. Any questions so far, just let me know. And there we go, the materials. They're proposing black brick, white stucco, cedar lap siding, and then black aluminum for the soffit and fascia and around the windows. So the renderings, you can get an idea of what this will look like somewhat. And you'll notice towards the front, they have the black brick, and as you move further back, it's stucco. So those are the recommended condition is if the HVAC material is close to the park, that it be screened, and then all final design details, and then any specific directions you might have after reviewing this, delegate it to planning staff. And that's into my report. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Commissioners, any questions for Aaron?
I have one question, actually. In terms of screening the mechanical equipment, how close is that to the park?
You know, that was an oversight on my end. We have a 4-foot setback requirement for all mechanical equipment, and I will work with the applicant for a better location for that.
Okay.
Actually noticed it after the meeting was canceled from September.
Relative to that question, if it is going to be so close to the park and the open public space, was there any conversation about acoustically screening that rather than simply visually screening that?
No conversation about acoustically screening it, but
okay,
that you can include that in there as well. I know how those sound at 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, so.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you so much.
All right.
Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
I believe Matt's here.
Very well.
Did not have a presentation.
How you doing?
Very good.
This is my first time doing this, so I don't really know what to do a whole lot, but to give a little context, we bought this house 8 or 9 years ago, 8 or 9 months ago, the existing house. It was a complete coincidence, but it was my wife's great-grandfather who built that house. And so my biggest critic, no, I don't, but yeah, my father-in-law is my biggest critic because he's super into like the history of the house and everything, and it was in quite a bit of disrepair. The other owner had chopped it up into a triplex, and so anyway, we're super proud. We spent over $400,000 and just finished the remodel on that existing house, and it's just beautiful. And Stuart back there did an amazing job of using a lot of the existing things, and we pulled off drywall on the fireplace, and there was this like 100-year-old mural that we brought back and everything. So anyway, we're super proud of what we did there. And this house, you can tell we've kind of spared no expense in the architecture, because this is the first house when you're looking up from City Creek Park up, this will be the first one you see. And so we tried really hard to blend a historical nature, but also make it modern and something that will be really amazing for 50 or 100 years. And so we put a lot of detail into the side of the house that runs along the park. So I know there's a lot more glass and a lot more features than a normal house, but we just felt that'd be really appropriate while you're looking up from the park to see something that was a little bit nicer on the side. So
Is that the side where you can see the stairs going up?
he could probably show you, so. And maybe the 3D rendering is or the colored is.
So when we're driving up and we're looking to the right there, we're going to see
The side of the side with all the glass going, all the long side of the house right there is what you'd see from the park that will be running along the park. So I know that didn't fit perfectly. We kind of had to like work with windows and stuff, but that's kind of what we came up with. So anyway, those are my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. So
tell me about the living roof.
our thought is, so on the top floor, there's kind of two master suites, and in between there's a balcony with a spiral staircase that goes up. And so our thought was actually, you can kind of see the little plants there, but our thought was kind of creating a green roof up there, but having a railing just where there's a little bit of living space up there.
Is that, is it?
Not living space, but just having like turning, since there's not a whole lot of yard and we're taking a lot of the yard, creating an outside space on the roof for people.
Very well. Commissioners, any other questions?
I know we're delegating details to staff, but it seems to me that there are some substantial details at the base of the house that don't seem to be resolved in the drawings, specifically where windows meet the ground. In the renderings, it seems like the grass just sort of flows through the bottom of the house. And in the elevations, if we could go to the elevation, there doesn't seem to be a terminus to those windows. And I guess the reason I'm asking is that that's an important element in a lot of historic houses in this neighborhood and all over the place. And it seems to me that that would be an important detail to resolve. And I'm just wondering what the plans are for that.
I'm not the world's expert. My thought on that is, obviously we set the house where we'll stay under the 35 feet, and the basement will sit, if it's a 9-foot basement, don't hold me to the exact amount, but 4 or 5 feet will be sitting above ground, and 4 will be kind of sunk into the ground-ish, so about half will be up and half will be down, to kind of preserve that look from the side, from the front. But the side, I'd imagine, since there's only 4 feet of park and we don't have a ton of room to put like window wells in, we'd probably just dig the side of the house down so that it looks like a walkout from the park side, but from the front of the house, it wouldn't look like that. And we've kind of put that fence in front to block it so it doesn't look like it's a walkout from the side. It looks like it's more of a half story from the front.
Very well.
You're right, we could have done a better job in the renderings for sure on that side part.
Can I ask you to state your name for the record, please?
Sure, Matt Robinson.
Thank you.
Very well. I do not believe there's any other questions, Matt, from the commissioners, either for you or from Aaron.
Okay. Thanks.
Are there any public hearing comments concerning this item? Okay. All right. Hearing none. I believe we're ready to close the public comments, and I don't know if there's anything else, Matt, that you wanted to say on your behalf?
Nope.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So let's go ahead and close and then move into executive session. Let's start with Kenton on your side, please. Any comments, please?
No, I think they've done an excellent job on this, and I'm in favor.
Yeah. Okay. Babs?
Like the other new construction, I really appreciate the incorporation of the historical elements in the neighborhood to bring it into the new construction so that they're represented, but yet it is a bona fide new structure. So yeah, I like it.
Michael, any comments?
I guess I'm a little more skeptical than my colleagues on the commission. I appreciate the way that they've worked within the constraints of this unusual sloped site, but I do find the details unsatisfying in this particular set of drawings, and I wish that we had just a little bit more information on that very important south face, because it is going to be so visible from a lot of different vantage points. How it meets the ground, I feel like, is a crucial detail for the architects to work out, and I just wish we had more information about it. The other thing that I find unsatisfying is the sort of floating effect of the stairs on both the front and the back. There's nothing underneath them. That's all I mean.
Is that a problem?
I guess I just, based on my awareness of what houses look like in this neighborhood, they tend to have stairs that are very firmly grounded to the ground. They tend to connect to porches or patios, and these are sort of floating. All of that being said, I mean, I'm probably an eye on this one. I just have those concerns about the details.
Carlton, you have any comments you'd like to share?
I maybe don't share the complexity of concern with respect to that, although I can understand where you're coming from. Architecture is not quite my forte like it is yours. The only thing that I would comment on is that I would prefer to see that if we are building a screen for the mechanical equipment, that be an acoustical screen so that we can mitigate sound transmission into City Creek Park, which really is a core feature of this part of the city.
I'll offer just a couple of comments in that when I was going through the packet, I think the thing that struck me is back on page number 2, and it just has to do with how, although it's new construction in a historic area, it feels like it fits height-wise, width-wise. It's an unusual site, based on where it is. But I can see into the future, 2-3 years from now when this is constructed, that it's it's a welcome addition to the neighborhood, and it feels right, and it doesn't overpower its neighbors, and it seems to be respectful to the past that it has, and so those would be my comments.
Mike, can I add one more thing? What Michael and Carlton said, I think, are appropriate too, and I agree with that. But overall, I appreciate that the applicant tried for a modern solution here rather than trying to do something faux historical in such a prominent site. It was better to acknowledge that you got to do something respectful but current than some we've seen over the years that are kind of a melange of styles and ultimately don't do either of them well. But I think I'd encourage the applicant to address the issues that Michael and Carlton have identified too.
Very well. Hearing all of the comments from the commission, I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
I'll do that. Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and input received during this hearing, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission approve this request for a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction of a dwelling at 158 North State Street as presented in PLN HLC 2022-00297 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
Very well. Thank you, Babs. May I have a second?
Second.
Very well. Thank you. Let's vote in order, please. Babs?
Aye.
Hinton?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Amanda?
Aye.
And I will vote in the affirmative as well. Thank you. Thank you, and good luck. Very well. Let's move on to the third. This is a minor alteration enforcement. And so I believe we have Aaron. You're up again. Thank you.
Hello again. Wait for this guy to load and we'll get moving. I apologize. My goodness. You know how sometimes when you click something and it won't open? That's what's happening. Yes. We'll get this to open eventually. And if we can't have a presentation, there we go. I'll pull up the staff report on the website. What's going on? I'm sorry, everybody. Okay. Okay, nothing's opening. Sorry, Aubrey.
Off the staff report on the online?
Yeah, I can just go off
Okay. Yeah, I don't, Adobe's not working.
being grouchy. Found a workaround. I'm running this PDF through Microsoft Edge. And here we go. There we go. This is for a enforcement case, like Michael said, for a painted brick at 275 South Douglas Street. Here's the context. We're recommending the commission deny this request as it does not meet the relevant standards in the Historic Preservation Code or in the design guidelines. So just some photos. Here's the one I took a week ago, a little over a week ago. Here's a Google Street View from June 2022. You can see the brick was not painted.
A little bit louder, Aaron, please.
What's that?
A little bit louder.
Yeah, there we go. So June 2022, and you can see the brick was not painted then. Here's a 1980 photo. I really enjoy this one. The proud owner out in front. And I'm not sure if the date on this one, it was an address card photo in the state information that they had. And just a comparison of what's going on. They've gone with this green color, which obscures the brick. And just based on what's in your staff report, staff does not find that painting the brick meets the standards. You've already seen a lot of these. This home was built in 1908, and the type of brick that was used is not really appropriate for painting. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but you all are probably you are all experts on this more than I am. So,
Commissioners, any questions for Aaron?
The staff report mentions that there's a few repairs where the bricks have been replaced
Yes.
with other colors.
Mhm.
How substantial are those repairs? We
they
only
were
saw 2 or 3 photos with like 1 or 2 bricks.
those are the photos provided by the applicant.
Okay.
And when she talks, or comes up, you can ask her that. But those are the 2 that I know of, and that was kind of the extent of it. So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron. Let's hear from the applicant. Remind that the applicant has 10 minutes. Hi.
Get the thing I emailed you with my presentation?
Nope, but I can get it.
Okay, it's fine. I can probably wing it. Hi, thank you for your time. I'm Dee Dee Plummer. My husband and I own this property at 275 South Douglas Street. Not an excuse, but I didn't know I needed to apply for the painting of the brick. So please just know that we started not, I know that that's no excuse, but we weren't trying to deceive anyone. I can't remember who asked the question. I think it was you, Michael, about we only have 2 of the repairs that aren't already painted. So there were quite a bit more repairs that were very similar to what you see in the pictures there, especially with that red mortar that was chosen. A lot of that was on the porch, and that was covered up already. A little background, my husband and I bought this house about 10 years ago, 2013. I have recently moved in last summer. Our plan is to occupy the home. We rented it to students for the last 10 years, with one of our kids always living in the basement while they attended the University of Utah. My husband and I both are graduates from the University of Utah and are relocating back here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have done extensive renovations in this house in the 10 years that we've owned it. It was in very bad shape when we bought it. The previous owners had not updated anything, and as you see in the brick, any repairs that were done poorly and with no attention to details or aesthetics. When we bought the house, we redid all the electrical, all the plumbing, added HVAC, and put an apartment in the basement. In the time after that, we also rebuilt the garage that was completely falling down. We put in a new driveway, added a sprinkling system. Since I moved in last year, we've added a brand new roof, completely new roof. The cedar siding was all over 50% damaged with insects and water, so we had to completely remove all of that and all of the trim. That was all replaced with high-quality cedar siding, just that we took off, and replaced with high-quality pine and cedar trim. We got new gutters, and in the attempt to then finish that work, we started painting. We had chosen craftsman-appropriate colors. I worked very closely with a paint design person to pick very like that, just classic craftsman green with the white trim. We're going to add some. We redid all the soffits, and we stained those in a beautiful cedar, and then we're going to add some nice red accents when we're all done, and I believe that it will be an absolutely gorgeous craftsman-style home when we're done. Any questions?
I do have one question. When I was driving around the neighborhood, and I live no more than 3 blocks from here, the painting that I think has happened is at the porch columns, at the porch, but on the west face, but not any painting. It started on the west, on the what would it be, the south side, and that's where it stopped.
Correct.
Was there any painting in the back and in the north side of the house? I couldn't tell. That's
We
what
had
I thought.
only done the porch before
Very
we
good.
were told we had to have the permit. So I also walked around the neighborhood, and I will say, rough estimate, there's about 560 homes in my historic district, 108 of which have at least partial painted brick. That is 19.3% of the homes in my district.
Commissioners, any questions for either Aaron or the applicant, T.D. Plumer? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe there's any public hearing comments concerning this. Okay, very good. All right, hearing none, let's close the public hearing. And I don't know that there's any other conversation, from the applicant. I think we've heard everything. So let's close this to the applicant and to the public and move into executive session. Can I go ahead and start, and then I'm going to call on people. I can't tell you how much I hate having these kinds of conversations about painted brick. It just seems to come up over and over, and I feel for people who do it, and yet as the Historic Landmark Commission and representing the city, there are things that are placed before us that we're supposed to abide by. And it's very straightforward, and even in, in the staff report, there are, 6, 7 different items, item number 2, number 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, that are not in compliance. And I mean, it's a very straightforward kind of thing. And so that's just my comment. These are unfortunate issues that come before the commission. Michael, I'm going to pick on you because you're nodding as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's unfortunate that we have these kinds of cases before us, and that we, in following staff recommendation or reading staff recommendation, there's not much room for us to divert unless we have a substantial reasoning for it, which we have had in some cases. But in this case, I don't think the repairs that have been done over the years are justification enough to paint the brick on the whole house. I think there are better solutions to that. So I agree with you, Mike.
I think it's, if I can look for any kind of silver lining here, the columns that are supporting the porch, the ones that are the 2, I think there may be 3. Those might be fairly benign to either sandblast or chemical etching or some kind of paint removal. When you start getting into the bulk of the house, the facade of the house itself, once you start doing those kinds of things, then it triggers other things, with the porosity of the mortar and water damage inside the house, to all of those kinds of things. So I'm happy that, quite frankly, that it was caught early and not that the entire house was painted. Any other commissioner comments? Very well. Commissioners, can I call for a motion, please, concerning this enforcement minor alteration?
Actually, Michael, could I say something?
Very good.
I agree. We're kind of stuck with the guideline. I, too, really hate these cases. All I'd say is I think we see where this is going in terms of our vote, but the commission, Michael read the paragraph about what the next step could be if this does not go in the applicant's favor. So I'd encourage you to consider what options you have.
Very well. Amanda, can I ask you for a motion, please?
Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission deny the proposed minor alteration request to paint the brick on the house located at approximately 275 South Douglas Street, as presented in petition PLN HLC 2022-00759.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Very well. Let's vote in order. Babs?
Aye.
Kenton?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
And I'm Mike Hill, and I vote aye as well. As was read previously, there is an appeals process, and I would welcome that you pursue that, please. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can I add real quick too, just for the applicant's sake? If you reach out to Kelsey Lindquist in the planning office, we can make sure that Erin gives you her contact information. She would be happy to help you figure out the best method for bringing that into compliance with the paint.
All right. Item number 4. This is actually a work session. These work sessions are not open to the public, so there's no public hearing, so we don't need to either open or close that. So let's have a presentation from my staff, please.
Hi there.
You're up. Michael?
Yes, thank
Like
you.
the name, thank you.
Okay. So this is a proposed rezone and master plan amendment for the property at 865 South 500 East. Because the property is in a local historic district and contains a contributing building to the district, your feedback is requested before the item moves to the Planning Commission for their recommendation to the City Council, who will be the ultimate approval body. The subject property is located at 865 South 500 East, just north of the intersection at 500 East and 900 South on the east side of the street. It is currently zoned RMF 30, low-density multifamily residential district. The applicant is proposing to amend the zoning map so that this property would be located in the CN Neighborhood Commercial District. He's also proposing to amend the Central Community Master Plan, which this property is located within. The future land use map and the plan designates this property as low-density residential, and the applicant would like to amend the map so that this property would be designated as neighborhood commercial. This would be done in order to support his rezone request. The stated goal of the applicant is to convert the structure on the property, which is currently a single-family dwelling, into a commercial use that would be allowed in the CN zone. The subject property contains a single-family home that was constructed in 1905 in the Victorian eclectic style. The home is located within and listed as a contributing structure to the Central City Local Historic District. City records indicate that this property has likely been used as a single-family dwelling since 1905, as there are no permits or other city approvals that demonstrate any other use. Because of the building's status as a contributing structure, demolition or exterior modifications would need to be approved via a certificate of appropriateness by planning staff or the Historic Landmark Commission. The proposed rezone would not impact the contributing status. The historic overlay zoning requirements for alterations to a contributing structure include a standard that a property shall be used for its historic purpose or be used for a purpose that requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building and its site and environment. Depending on the alterations proposed by the applicant to accommodate a commercial conversion, should the rezone request be approved, the proposed alterations would need to address this standard and could be in conflict with it. The block of 500 East, on which this property is situated, is defined primarily by residential uses, generally single and two-family dwellings and small multifamily buildings. Liberty Park is located within close proximity. Directly to the west is a 70-unit apartment building, which is the largest structure in the immediate area. The two properties to the south contain a restaurant and a butcher shop. These properties are zoned CN, so the proposed rezone would expand the footprint of the CN zone and extend it to the interior of the block on 500 East. In general, properties along the 900 South corridor are zoned CN RB, which is the residential business district, or RMF 30. To the north of 900 South, the interior of the blocks are generally zoned RMF 30, including the block of 500 East, which contains the subject property. If approved, this rezone would be the first example in the immediate area of a property on the interior of a block being zoned for commercial. RMF 30 and CN differ primarily in the types of uses permitted in each district. RMF 30 allows for single, two, and multifamily dwellings, depending on the size of the lot. It does not allow for commercial uses, although it does permit non-residential uses that are incidental to residential neighborhoods, such as community gardens, daycares, or parks. By contrast, CN does not permit residential as a standalone use. Residential is only permitted as part of a mixed-use development, which is a specific land use classification defined as a development that includes residential and non-residential uses allowed in the zoning district on the same site. CN does allow for many different types of commercial development, which are intended to be compatible with residential neighborhoods in scale. Examples of allowed uses include retail goods and services, restaurants, and offices. Development standards between the two districts are similar, although CN generally is more permissive, allowing for more lot coverage and smaller setbacks. Maximum building height, however, is shorter in CN at 25 feet compared to RMF 30, which allows for 30 feet. Remapping the property to CN would introduce landscape buffering requirements because the neighboring properties to the north and east are zoned for residential. A 7-foot landscaping buffer is required when abutting a residential district, and parking lot perimeter landscaping is required when the parking is located within 20 feet of a lot line or in a required yard. However, it should be noted that these requirements would only be applicable to new construction, an expansion of the building, or reconfiguration of the parking area. They would not apply to the existing building and parking area if they were left alone. A number of adopted city plans and policies are applicable to the proposed project. Plan Salt Lake is the citywide master plan, and this property is located in the Central Community Neighborhood Plan area. Because of the property's location in a local historic district, the city's preservation plan also applies. And because the proposal would involve replacing a housing unit with a non-residential use, the city's housing plan, Growing SLC, is applicable as well. In general, the proposed rezone is not supported by the applicable plans and policies. The Central Community Master Plan in particular contains a land use policy that specifically states that low-density residential areas should be preserved, and the city should keep them from being replaced by higher-density residential and commercial uses. Several specific goals and initiatives in Growing SLC are also not supportive of the proposed amendment. Plan Salt Lake is more mixed, with some guiding principles and initiatives in the neighborhood's transportation and mobility and economy chapters being in support of the proposal, while principles and initiatives in the housing and parks and recreation chapters were not supportive. In general, the community preservation plan is supportive of adaptive reuse where it creates more housing units, but is not in outright support of converting housing to a non-residential use. Policies related to reuse of existing structures can be found in 2 chapters of the plan. These policies would largely support an adaptive reuse for more housing units. Some policies may offer support for a project that converted a housing unit to non-residential if the structure were not significantly altered and negative impacts were mitigated. On balance, the adopted plans and policies of the city do not support the requested rezone and master plan amendment. In particular, the fact that there is a specific policy in the neighborhood plan for this area that states this exact type of land use conversion should be avoided is a strong conflict. Because of this, staff will recommend to the Planning Commission that they forward a negative recommendation to the City Council. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you have at this time.
I guess thank you, Michael. I guess I have one question in reading the petition request. There is yet an unspecified commercial use that just hadn't been delineated at all, just some kind of commercial use that would be applicable.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Commissioners, any questions for Michael?
Michael, I didn't quite hear that last part. What is staff's thinking on this?
So we will be forwarding we will recommend that the Planning Commission forward a negative recommendation to the City Council.
A negative?
A negative, yes.
Negative. I'm just thinking about, and I'm unable to get online to check the zoning. My office is on 9th East and 13 South, actually 1234 South, 9th East. We are 3 buildings up from the corner. And I believe we are a CN zone there. And there's commercial around us. The next building to the north of us, I believe, no, that's not CN. We're the last CN, but it's 3 buildings up from the corner. So 9th East, 13th South. Why is this 5th East, 9th South intersection, why are you negative to expanding the commercial slightly when it's contiguous to CN?
So the primary reason is that the Central Community Master Plan specifically says that this is something that we didn't want to see. There's a specific land use policy that talks about converting low-density residential areas to higher-density residential and commercial, and about how we didn't want to see that in this master plan area.
Comments about how Sorry, comments about how we're not replacing the housing. And that's critical in our city right now, so we'd be taking out some housing there. The other part that I found interesting in the report was when you go by there, they did take out, it's a giant concrete slab now with a bench and in the report it said there's going to be an enclosure there. So it's like the commercial's already crept into it one way or another. So I'm kind of favoring right now the applicant versus the city on this one because it's just not feeling right here, the way it looks to me.
I can comment as well in that when I've driven around this neighborhood and 2 or 3, 4 blocks, around there as well, and I can see and understand that, in living, not very far from here as well, that housing keeps getting chipped away, little by little, and I get that, and we're in such a housing crunch right now that that's anathema. On the other hand, there's looking at that neighborhood, and I'm kind of with you, Ken, in that I look at the neighborhood and it's already been chipped away and it's already commercialized, and that's why I was really wanting to know what the unspecified commercial, if there was a clue that that it would be something as that if it would be a nice restaurant in an old house, but it's an old house, so that's still, at least it keeps the fabric of the neighborhood somewhat the same. So I'm a little bit, I can see both points, both sides, and I'm a little bit torn, and I just don't know. I could be swayed either way because I can understand the points either way.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily going to happen here, but across the street from us would be the northeast corner of the 9th East, 13th South intersection. A convenience store closed, and now it's a tattoo parlor. I was looking for the Funky Bakery espresso shop, and it's tattoos.
Well,
so who knows? I mean, commercial.
This owner has done an amazing job with that corner. I mean, that closed-up gas station that was just trashed for years. Has, turned it into a wonderful restaurant, a butcher shop next door. I mean, just doing wonderful things, redeveloping one man only in that neighborhood.
Michael, it seems like it could go in one of two directions.
Yeah.
That it stays as it is, and the applicant is denied, or the applicant is successful, and then, to be honest, I think we have another review of what's going to go in.
Right.
And that can also go, up or down. So it's interesting, and it just feels like there's not quite enough information to say, well, you should do this or you shouldn't do that. It's interesting information, and I guess I'm, for one, waiting for more information in the next step as to how I would react.
Who did all of the concrete work out there? Was that UTA?
I'm actually not sure. The applicant is here, and he might have a better idea, but.
Commissioners, yes, Amanda?
I think I take the opposite side of being swayed, in that you'd have to I would need to see more information as to why there's really a necessity to take away the housing element. I noticed that, ironically, the owner's name in 1989 was Rentco. So it's been a rental for quite some time, and I do believe it's currently a rental, according to the report. And because the balance of the city plans seem to be in favor of maintaining that rental residential status, it should be a pretty darn good restaurant or business to consider encroaching on the residential neighborhoods, I think. And because another office is 3 blocks down on 9th East doesn't necessarily mean that the central city should go that direction too. It's almost, well, darn, they didn't catch that one, but let's not just assume that that's the way to go.
And Amanda, I wasn't saying that's necessarily the case. We can't be making judgments of if it's a fine restaurant, it's okay, but if it's a tattoo shop, it's not.
Right, so what I'm saying is I'm in favor of keeping it residential. I don't see any compelling reason to change it.
I was just trying to understand the difference in what seemed to be comparable intersections and the usage and why one was allowed and one not, but perhaps the one I'm referring to where my office is outside that central planning zone.
I'm not sure. I think it might be far enough away that it's in a different, but I'm not sure.
No, it's a tough one because if the zoning was left as it is, well, the house probably isn't coming down in any case, but I was thinking if there could be more density of housing there, could you put some townhomes, 2 or 3, 4-unit townhome, if we're trying to increase housing stock but keep it from going commercial, can you add density appropriately in a zone that's contiguous to a commercial? I don't know.
Well, we're making that up.
Yeah, it's
So Mike,
We don't have laws here that if you tear it down, you gotta replace it, so.
Mike, could you
And
remind me?
Commissioners, if I could, I was just going to mention that, for example, Kent, in your situation, the Central Community Master Plan does support those existing commercial uses. And so if it's CN, which I looked, it was CN, and this whole area was rezoned in 1995, we know that there's a lengthy history of commercial uses in that area. So the plan says, yeah, we want to keep those neighborhood commercial nodes. We just don't want to see them continue to expand because, at what point is it now no longer a neighborhood commercial if, we've creeped into the whole block? So.
Could you remind me, in a work session, is the applicant allowed to make a presentation as well? Or is it solely
I'm
the staff?
sorry, I didn't catch the first one.
Is the applicant permitted to speak in a work session?
Yes.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Yeah, we seem to have gone down the conversation path without hearing from the applicant, which concerns me a bit.
Unless that violates any precepts, yes, I didn't think so. Yes, certainly. And the applicant is Rick Service? Very good. You're welcome to speak, Mr. Service. I think it's easier to hear from here, please. You have to be a rock star and get very close.
Not much of that, so
it's uncomfortable for me as well.
I don't know what to do. My name is Rick Service. I have owned the 3 properties on that corner, I do own 865 South, 500 East, and then 501 East, 900 South, and 511 East, 900 South. The 501 and the 511 are the CN zone, but the 865, however, is not. Going east on 900 South, 517 East and 900 South is a CN zone. However, and this is just a point of interest maybe, but that house is now being lived in by the 3rd generation of family, and they have no intent. They love the neighborhood. I don't think you could, for $1 million, you couldn't buy that house probably from them because they 3rd generation. The 3rd generation that is there is probably mid-30s, something like that. So, foreseeably, maybe, it might be another 40 years before the chance of that house to become, if whatever happens, the chance of that house to become an CN or a commercial zone or a commercial property. Only 2/3 of the original CN zone is being used. Now, if we look at 865, this property is really interesting, and I don't know when this happened, but the history is, and this is back several years, with the original owner of 517. I know it's a little crazy. The original owner of 517 purchased the back lot of the backyard of 865 Because the people who owned 865, the man got sick and had some hospital bills. This is the way I understand the story, at least. Had some hospital bills, and so the people at 517 bought their back property from him to help him pay for the hospital bills. Now, that is an illegal purchase. Of course, I'm not addressing that at all. But what I mean by that is, you in a subdivided neighborhood, you can't subdivide your lot and sell it off to the neighbor. If that were the case, then, somebody would be like, I don't want to shovel my snow. Do you want to buy it? Or want to buy my driveway? So, and the reason I'm saying this is there really isn't an opportunity to add an additional housing unit there because the lot is so small now. In the back of the house, there really is only room for 2 cars maybe. There's not a carport. It's just a driveway back there. And if you can, it's not up anymore, but if you can see, the driveway for it is used as the driveway for the Beltex Meats, which is at 511 East, but their walk-in cooler is back there. And so that driveway has turned into, we could kind of say, a commercial driveway. In that house, there was no backyard, so there's not really an opportunity. The person I rented to works at the restaurant right now. If they move out, or if he moves out, there's really not an opportunity like to rent it to a family or something, because there's no backyard for the kids to go and play or anything like that.
They've got a park across the street.
Right, they do. So I guess all I'm getting at is no one could have known that 517 wasn't going to be a commercial space. And so in moving this, it kind of, to me at least, it balances the corner. And, I may be wrong, but anyway.
Your argument is nobody's ever going to take that east property east of the meat shop. They're never going to turn that into commercial, even though it's commercially zoned. You'd rather have it over here, is your logic.
That's what I'm trying to
And
say.
then the $1 million question is, what the hell do you want to do with this piece of property?
Good question. I don't know. Really, I have not had any effort at all in trying to rent it to anything. I really just am trying to take the first step to get it zoned so I can try to find a tenant, and then we'll be back in front of you again. I understand, at least I believe that I understand. I know they are constantly changing, but I believe I understand what it takes to work with you and to work with the Planning Commission to be able to make a structure that will make everybody happy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're in a position on the Historic Landmark Commission, and our main charge, quite frankly, is to maintain the fabric of the historic neighborhood. I mean, that's the overarching, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so that's, I think, with whatever comes before us, if indeed this moves forward and the zoning changes, that's going to be our first.
We certainly will address that.
And
Yes.
just as I said in that earlier case, there's always a mechanism. Should we vote adversely to what you want, there's an appeals process. I think I'll go back to what I first said, in that this feels like, and not even looking at your property, that housing in all of these areas is just being chipped at a little bit and a little bit, and there's a tipping point, that how much has this area, because you're talking about that 517 has purchased what used to be the backyard, and so now what's left of 865 has been diminished by that backyard, and I understand the point, but it's still larger than it may be. This site may be larger than some that we've looked at earlier this evening. So can it still be a viable home? Can it, perhaps, I think, so it's right on the edge. And you've got the CN almost, not quite surrounding it, but to the south and to the east a bit. But but to the, a little bit north and east, and certainly east, it is residential. Across the street, it's something, it's something else. It's what is it, RM1. So this is in that transition zone it's just hard to determine. And I don't know that we've helped you. I think we see and understand, what your question is. I'm not certain where to go or what to advise you on, moving forward.
Mr. Chair, can I interject for a moment? I think it's important for the commission to remember that you are giving advice to the Planning Commission here, not the applicant. And that is the charge of what our code says for zoning changes. And so the real question is, does the proposal impact the purpose of the Central Community Historic District? And is there reason to change it, to change those adopted policies?
Well,
That's what the Planning Commission is going to be looking at as well.
the housing, though, in the housing loss mitigation, to quote, when a property includes residential dwelling units within its boundaries, a petition for a zoning change that would permit a non-residential use of land cannot be approved until a housing mitigation plan is approved by the city. So
That's not us.
that's not us at all. But when we're talking about possibilities, just amongst ourselves here, is you could tear down this house and keep housing there and mix it with some commercial. Do I understand that right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty then.
And I'm not sure how this plays into it, but typically when a commercial zone abuts a residential zone and there's a certain level of work done on a commercial building, a landscape buffer and fence has to be installed. And I can't tell from the photo here, and I don't recall from going by, but Michael, perhaps you can clarify this, but it looks like it doesn't have that, and that adversely affects the quality of the residential zoning there.
That's what, the fence to the south?
It'd be to a fence and a landscape buffer between commercial and residential.
So that kicks in when for existing properties, when there's an expansion.
Yeah.
So there has to be an expansion of that use in order to trigger that required buffering requirement. If somebody's coming in to change the use within an existing building, that in and of itself doesn't trigger the buffer.
Okay, so when it was the old gas station turned into restaurant and butcher shop, that didn't trigger?
No, because it's not an expansion of the building, right? They were using the same building, and so the change of use on itself doesn't necessarily do that.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
So I have a couple comments. I'm actually probably on the far end here of being quite in favor of the applicant for a couple reasons. I understand the housing considerations, but at the end of the day, that's a planning commission decision. It's not something that Historic Landmarks Commission has any particular input into. In reading this, and I've read it twice, I see only two provisions that really speak to the historic aspect, which would be our purview. And I actually disagree with the conclusions in the report on both, and I'll explain why. The first one relates to the comment about what property uses shall be used for, and the report seems to suggest that the proposal is in conflict with the following standard: a property shall be used for its historic purpose, or be used for a purpose that requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building and the site and environment. And goes on to say that the language of property use shall be used for historic purpose is relevant, and seems to completely ignore the or be used for a purpose that requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building. There is, at this point, no suggestion that the defining characteristics of the building will change, and I don't see this provision being in conflict with the proposal. The other one that specifically speaks to historic aspect is commentary in the city's plans and planning provisions and standards that speak to conversions to residential properties. And there seems to be a suggestion that because the standard speaks to converting properties into residential but not residential into commercial, that this would be in conflict. And I fundamentally disagree with that too. Largely because the reason that there is a focus on converting former commercial and industrial properties that are historic into residential is because they are inadequate or unsuitable for commercial and industrial use in the modern age. And for the most part, one of the few, if not the only, realistic subsequent use is residential. It's uneconomic to convert a former residential building, especially a historic one, into a commercial or an industrial use. And I've done a lot of conversions of commercial and historic industrial buildings into residential uses in Salt Lake and in Washington, D.C., and never once have I seen it go the other direction. So I think that provision is not suggesting that there is some sort of standard against converting residential into commercial, but rather, in order to maintain preservation, we were encouraging conversion into residential in lieu of abandonment or losing the historic building in the first place. So I don't see any provision that relates to historic preservation in this report that would prevent us or even argue against allowing the change in zoning. I'm in favor of permitting the change in zoning from a historical preservation perspective, based on the information we have now.
I keep going back, Michael, to the housing loss mitigation. And it's just, and when I read, a housing impact statement will need to be prepared and approved by the city's zoning. But the first paragraph, when a property includes residential dwelling units, and this is, within its boundaries, and it is, a petition for zoning change that would permit non-residential use cannot be approved until a housing mitigation plan is approved by the city. So that's fairly straightforward as to what the path forward ought to be, that if indeed this non-residential use is proposed, then there has to be a housing mitigation plan that is approved by the city. So that, I think, sir, that's straightforward, and that's the answer. That yes, I believe there's a path forward for this to be used as a CN or something like that, but it has to come with a companion housing mitigation plan. So there's a yin and yang to doing what you're requesting, but it comes with this mitigation plan that has to be approved as well by the city. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
So is that like a separate application?
Yeah, so
We haven't done yet?
actually you gave me materials for this, and
Oh, okay.
we discussed this last. It's the housing loss mitigation plan, and so there are three options under that the housing loss mitigation ordinance. One is to build replacement housing.
Right.
One is to pay a fee into the city's housing trust fund, and the third is to claim that the unit is deteriorated and pay a flat fee to replace it with something non-residential.
But Michael, just to be clear, that third option where deteriorated housing exists, this is not deteriorated housing, is it?
Correct. And the applicant is not. Yeah, the applicant's not making that claim.
So it's really just the two options that I think. There's the replacement housing, and there's a fee based on the difference between housing value and replacement cost.
And my question's always been, what is that fee?
So it's based on the difference between the county's assessment of what the building is worth without the land and the ICC's assessment of what it costs to construct something that would replace it. So we look at what their figure is for finished and unfinished area for this type of construction, this residential type of construction. And then whatever the difference is, that's what the fee ends up being.
Tax record, just for fun. 865, is it?
It's,
Okay, just for fun.
865 South, 500 East.
Anyway, keep moving. I'm really curious about this. 865 South, no.
Has this been helpful?
Yes. Yes, and everything that you have indicated will go to the Planning Commission so that they...
The assessed tax value is 358.
So I think that's with the building and the land. The
land
building...
112, and the building is 246.
Right.
And that's
Yes.
the current assessment.
Yes.
So, there you go. Interesting. I've done this math before, so.
Okay, so then,
What's our job tonight? We are
You're-
to make a recommendation to planning at this point in time?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a recommendation, and you can choose. Your charge is to give advice to the Planning Commission so that when they're considering a change to the master plan and the zoning amendment, they can consider that before they make a recommendation to the City Council.
so I'm going to go back to Michael, just to, I think, to help the applicant. You said 100 plus 250 or?
So,
Okay, so I'm just throwing this out.
Right. But just so you know, the housing loss mitigation is not at all part of the Landmarks Commission or frankly the Planning Commission's purview.
Understood. All I'm trying to do is that's housing value, and then replacement costs. So it's a fee-based difference between those two. And I think that's where you may be able to help the applicant in terms of what that replacement cost might be, so that the applicant might know and understand what that fee might be.
Yes.
And then, so that's one. And then the first one was just what the replacement housing, could be.
Right.
We already have all this information and
Right.
discussed it with
So
the
then-
applicant, and I believe they've submitted their report and it's under review.
Right.
Yes.
Very good. Fair? Thank you.
I just want to clarify the larger justification for the zoning change. It seems to be based on the letter that we have in our document that the property has become less desirable to renters.
True.
I guess I'm just not convinced yet that that's the case. I mean, I definitely think that the paving of the front yard was detrimental in terms of its desirability, but I think that's not really enough for me to be able to overcome the second condition that Carlton was talking about, this maintenance of, I don't know, the character of this particular neighborhood, because we're not supposed to just judge at the scale of the property, right? We're supposed to zoom out and think about the larger character of the whole historic district, which in my view, would be detrimentally impacted by this continued chipping away of residential use into commercial use. So that's my perspective. I'm not sure what else I have to say right now, but.
Michael, following that line of reasoning, and I'm not clear which way I prefer, but that could be a way for other commercial users to chip away at the integrity, is you make it so the adjacent residential property becomes less and less desirable.
Right.
Until finally you come in and say, well, no one wants to live here anyhow because there's this noisy business next door and they park in our yard and blah, blah, blah. I think that would tend to support your thinking of maybe it's not appropriate to rezone.
I mean, that's just my perspective. I've never been on the planning commission, but I feel like the chipping away isn't going to necessarily stop here. if that's the justification for it. But I'm not clear on what the justification for it is other than that. If there's more reasoning behind the rezone aside from just this has become less desirable as a rental unit. So
is there a reason to be concerned about precedent here? Where could this go with respect to other parts of the city? Yeah, these are thinking out loud. These are not decisions. It's just concepts that are brought up. So I guess my advice to the Planning Commission is you got a tough one here that is not clear cut at all. Good arguments both ways. Carlton, what you said made a lot of sense as well. Yeah, I'd say to the Planning Commission, don't rush this decision. It's pretty complex.
But I think prior to that, if I'm understanding this correctly, that satisfying the housing loss mitigation is a tool that the applicant needs to be prepared for if indeed he wants to move forward. That's a part of this process, correct?
Yes. And so what we will do is, we've already created the housing loss mitigation report. When it goes to Planning Commission, they'll have that for their review, and then the City Council will be the ones to decide whether or not to adopt the recommendation that is in that report. So if they decide to approve the rezone, then they could also decide that it can only be approved if the conditions in the report are met.
Very good. Do you have any final questions of us, sir?
No, I don't think so, because I think it just all circles around to maybe we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one other bit of business, otherwise
Chair?
known as other business.
Excuse me,
And it-
Chair. Before we move on to that, I just wanted to let the commission know that while John Uwanowski is not in attendance tonight, he has expressed his willingness to serve should he be elected.
We're good.
All right. Thank you, Aubrey. I thought that might happen, and so the other business that we have in front of us is the chair and the vice chair elections. What I was going to initially say was, since John was not here, to postpone it, but it sounds like he is fine with, so then I would say that the discussion is open for chair and vice chair elections.
Who wants to do it?
I'm willing to move to the chair.
Cool.
Vice chair.
Thanks.
For Michael and I, and Barbara, who are newer, Kenton, have you been chair or vice chair before?
A couple of years, yeah.
Right.
All right, I wasn't sure.
And I've done it for a year and a half, 2 years, it feels like.
Like forever.
It feels a little bit longer, but I think it's been a couple of years, I think. And so, and John had indicated that he was amenable to either chair or vice chair?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But he's not here. You guys are.
Yeah, and so.
He
that's
does
why,
not have to
honestly,
be
I was
present
gonna
in order to
suggest
be
that-
voted
that
in.
John, that we postpone it, but since Aubrey had said that he would be amenable to either, is there any suggestions by the commission? Because I'm going to refrain from this one.
Can we
So I
clarify
think-
the roles of the vice chair?
Say it again?
Can we clarify the roles of the vice chair?
Vice chair needs to bring Cokes to us when we wave.
I've been vice chair for, a year, and
The vice chair, during the absence of the chair, shall have and perform all of the duties and functions of the chair.
Right.
And then if the chair resigns, then you're the chair.
Thank you for that clarification.
What was that famous vice president quote about it's worth as much as a cup of warm tea or something like that.
And so we can be clear about the expectations. The chair and vice chair need to meet with staff before each meeting. That's typically on a Monday or a Tuesday, midday, typically a half an hour meeting, sometimes less, where we go over the agenda items and address any concerns you may have. You will have to go through a 1-hour training prior to your first meeting. That training is scheduled for, let me double check that. Monday, October 9th. Yep. And that is required.
October 9th, you said?
Yes. Actually, sorry, that's Tuesday, October 11th at 1 p.m.
Aubrey, just as a clarification, my term ends this October, or is it October 2023? When I looked at the website, it said 23, but I wasn't certain.
It is October 2023, so you have another year.
So, there's been discussion. Babs, you
For
would like to
October
move into
2023.
the,
No, I'm sorry, you're
There
August.
has, I was just going to say basically there has to be, someone has to nominate someone to be the chair, and then you vote, and then you do the same for vice chair. If
and where I was going was there's been discussion of
Yeah.
that. Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to elect Babs DeLay as the the chair of the Historic Landmarks Commission.
I'll second.
Oh.
There's a second. All right, let's be formal. Let's go in order. A motion has been made to have Babs DeLay as the chair, and that's beginning in October 2023, or that's beginning this
That will begin next month.
next month? Very
Yes.
good. Let's go in order. Babs?
Aye.
Kenton?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Amanda?
Aye.
And I would vote aye as well. So congratulations. So now then, is there a motion for the vice chair?
Well, I would be more than happy to myself, but John has expressed interest and frankly has been on the commission a little longer. I'm perfectly happy to nominate John for the vice chair.
Very good.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's go vote in order, please. Again, Babs? Kenton?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
And I would vote in the affirmative as well. So beginning in October, this next month, correct?
November.
This next meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, this next meeting, then we will have Babs DeLay as chair and John Uwanowski as vice chair.
But you're not going off the commission, are you?
That's a decision.
No, he's not leaving the commission. He's on the commission until the
I will
2023.
just be able to move to another chair other than this one.
But it's pretty comfy in Carlton's chair.
It's a very nice chair. I don't believe there's any other business this evening.
Actually, I had one question, actually. There was an item on...
Close the meeting.
It's not formal. There was an item on the agenda for September regarding 130 U Street that I noticed didn't show up on the agenda for this year or this meeting and wasn't one of the ones that was postponed. Whatever happened to that? I was just curious.
So it's the two that were postponed in our, is that the ones you're talking about?
It was in one of the items for September's meeting, but it didn't come back up this session.
It did not.
Okay.
I was curious about that too, but I suspected it was just,
You're good.
just being held back.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
That was on the docket and then has gone off into thin air somewhere.
The one on the minor alterations on U Street, there was some information left off the staff report and off the application that needed to be added, so it will come again with additional application. That ended up being resolved administratively. Yes.
Yeah, you're right. We relooked at it and realized it could actually be approved administratively, so.
Ooh. I adjourned the meeting already.